My mother-in-law insinuated to family that I abuse my wife because my daughter had a temper tantrum and hit my wife. My wife, 23F, and I, 32 meters, have a 2-year-old daughter Amelia together. My wife was visiting with her mother the day before Thanksgiving when Amelia had a temper tantrum and hit my wife. It happens. Amelia was reprimanded and apologized. My wife is a preschool teacher, so she's amazing at navigating these types of behaviors. This isn't a common occurrence, but anyone who has kids knows that 2-year-olds can be testy sometimes. I find out that my mother-in-law had been talking to her sister and saying that Amelia must be seeing that type of behavior at home, and it's absolutely devastating that her granddaughter is being raised in a house like ours. My mother-in-law has a tendency to be overdramatic. We all know this, but I feel that this took it a step too far. Insinuating that I would ever hurt my wife is a deal breaker for me. My wife agreed that we should uninvite her to the small Thanksgiving gathering we were having. It was 7 people. Now her mother is using this to tell the family that I'm trying to isolate her from friends and family. I've never had any personal issues with her mother before, other than, as I've said, she's incredibly dramatic. However, I feel like this could be one of those things a relationship can't come back from. Editing to clarify, I can't believe I have to do this, but my wife and I began dating when she was 20 and I was 29. She was my niece's preschool teacher, and for a few months I picked my niece up from preschool while my sister worked. She got pregnant soon after we began dating, and we got married at the end of last year. Her family, as well as mine, is incredibly supportive of our relationship, which is a very happy, healthy one. Thank you to everyone who gave advice, instead of making wild accusations. My wife and I took your advice, and my wife had a conversation with her mother. Thank you all. So this is just my 2 cents. The fact you guys uninvited her to everything, which I 100% understand, you are not helping your case. In case of domestic abuse, the abuse tries to isolate the abusee from their loved ones. Obviously you're not abusing your wife, and your Mill is a drama queen and your daughter is battling the terrible twos. I worked as a preschool teacher for 2 years and volunteer with the 2-year-olds at my church, so I really understand that age, so I know they're hitting usually 99.9% of time doesn't really mean any actual harm, but them not knowing what hitting quite means yet until you reprimand them. Like some say, sit the Mill down if you haven't yet and explain why she's doing isn't cool, and that Amelia is just going through an age where she may be a little bit more aggressive as a kid, and she can go pick any parenting book and research herself if she wants, and it's nothing to do with home life, and that if she wants to be able to remain in your guy's life, she needs to stop spreading rumors and lies, or she will have little to no do with you guys. In the end, it's up you and your wife, since I don't agree with her mom calling you a wife beater when your daughter was being a typical 2-year-old. Edit, Grandma. Instead of uninviting your Mill and excluding her, you need to have a very frank conversation with her. Directly confront her accusations. Tell her that you feel betrayed and why. This is a time for direct confrontation, even though it might be uncomfortable. Particularly since she's telling everyone who will listen that her daughter is sleeping with the enemy. You're 32 and have a 2-year-old with a 22-year-old. I'd be concerned as well if I was the mother. Cutting her out of the dinner for this information you heard through the grapevine is isolating her from her family. Your reaction to this whole situation is immature and telling. How old were you when you first got with your wife? A 30-year-old man knocking up a young woman of only 21 years old doesn't sound like good judgment or someone that has that women's best interests in mind. The family probably didn't give you their blessing for this marriage and is most likely concerned for their daughter's well-being. You should try to talk to them and spend even more time with them to make them feel more comfortable around you. Cutting them off only furthers the suspicion. You all didn't try a conversation first. My wife, 23F, and I, 32 meters, have a 2-year-old daughter. Is everyone just going to gloss over this? I am not saying what the mill did was right, but I would be worried if my daughter was in a similar situation. Instead of talking it out like a normal person, you cut her out of the dinner from info you got secondhand. How old were you two when you first got together? The family probably wasn't supportive of this marriage and is most likely concerned for their daughter's well-being. You should try to talk to them and spend even more time with them to make them feel more comfortable around you. Cutting them off only furthers the suspicion. I noticed this too. They're not approving of their relationship, with such a big gap, and being on the lookout for red flags have made her dramatic. She found a false one, and now he's cutting her off. Maybe because she is dramatic, maybe because she was right. On the internet can't know, but he can show his wife, see everyone thinks she's crazy, let's cut her off completely. Or he can have a conversation. Keep an open mind. Be an adult. Our baseball coach is very homophobic. 2 of our best players are gay, but we are all working together to hide that from him. We're all 17, give or take. We all come from a place where, if you don't win a scholarship for one thing or another, you're not going to college. Being on the varsity team of any sport is a full-time commitment, and our spots are constantly up for grabs if someone better / who'd work harder comes along. You know the whole thing, only 7.3% of high school players go NCAA and only 9.9% of them go pro, so we've set up a system where we can practice all year, in and out of season, so as you can imagine, our team is incredibly close friends. Arguably we're far more loyal to each other than our coach. We're all hell-bent on moving up in the world in one way or another. Our coach is a good coach. He is. We've done very well in our state and beyond. I want to say more, but I'm afraid to ruin being anonymous. The only problem is that, if we do anything wrong, he immediately goes for homophobic jabs. Sometimes I think he thinks he's all woke and modern because he does that instead of sexist, throw like a girl stuff since he has daughters. He's pretty much congratulated himself for it to us. 2 of us are gay. They're dating each other. They were completely closeted, until we all slowly began to figure it out despite their best efforts. I mean, how many hours can you spend traveling and working with someone before you get to know them and their tells? We all grew up together, and even when they were overcompensate to cover it, they were still treating each other different than the rest. Hell, my dumbass thought they were mad at each other in sophomore year. Then, one night when we were hanging out, after the rest of us talked it over together, one of our friends basically said, "Let's address the elephant in the room. We've seen X and Y and heard Z, and we just want you to know that, if we're right in thinking that you're in a relationship, we completely support you both. You're free to be yourselves around us, you know." And since then, they've been able to be a normal, dating couple when it's just the lot of us, and our girlfriends are in on it too. And when adults and teachers are around, we all know to do everything to keep the secret. They don't deserve to be insulted to their face. No one does. But they're, like, singularly good guys. One is class president and the other one is in the middle of collecting winter wear for kids in our community displaced by COVID. It's so strange to be able to see behind the bullshit our coach just says to all of us, and to know that it's opinions like his that makes our friends have to pretend to be different people for the majority of the day. I've asked them each whether or not it bothers them, and they've shrugged it off, saying that they're privileged enough just to be born at a time where they can be themselves with their friends. But my philosophy on the whole thing is that, yes, they're lucky to be born at a time where respect for gay people is expected. Times have been worse, but they sure as shit could be better for them. Respect is a right when you're doing nothing wrong, especially when you're hardworking and kind as well. This shit makes me furious. My relationship with my girlfriend is one of the only things keeping me sane between work, schoolwork, practice, maintaining my scholarships, hunting for more, and the chaos in the world at large. I don't think I could handle it. I also had to balance having to pretend to be all, hello fellow associate, with her 90% of the time. Is there any way to help? I've wanted to pull our coach aside and talk to him since he knows I'm straight, and I can come from the angle of, hey, what you're doing isn't affecting me, but your behavior still blows, so change it up. But I don't want to make things worse. We got particularly screamed at and called FGs yesterday, and this shit has my skin crawling. I love Gen Z boys so much. They're dismantling so many toxic expectations put on them by the previous generations, who also had it put upon them. You sound like you're doing great. Keep your heart open to empathy and keep practicing the skill of seeing life from another person's eyes in order to help them. Good job, kiddo. I don't have a clear answer for you, but I think you should talk with your team about this first, and make sure everyone's on board. The two guys might not want to draw particular attention to the slurs in case someone picks up on why it bothers you all. It sounds like it could affect your scholarship chances if he gets pissed off about you talking to him and decides not to give a recommendation. Factor that into account, especially if the two of them are saying they're okay with it. It's not okay, of course, and something needs to be said. That can, however, be said a few months from now just as well after you've secured a scholarship, or you could talk to the principal and make sure it's kept anonymous. Hey, teacher and former vice principal here. Sounds like awesome guys. Your coach's behavior is not okay. I would love to know where in the country/world you are. If you are in the United States, calling people homophobic slurs is considered sexual harassment. You could let the administration of your school know what is happening. They are required to investigate and address it. Alternately, you alone or the entire team could talk to him and let him know that those comments are unacceptable. There might be more strength in the entire team talking to him. I, 17F, told my best friends, 18F, boyfriend, 18M, the truth and things went bad. My BFF and I have known each other forever. We are currently seniors in high school and have been friends since elementary school. For the last 3 to 4 years she has been boy crazy, always moving from one relationship to the next and always seems to have another boy in line in case her current relationship ends. But as far as I know she has never actually cheated on anyone. She's been with her current BF since just before the school year started. He's really the nicest, most sweetest guy ever, but this is his first relationship, so he can be a little naive, and my BFF definitely takes advantage of that. I've talked to her about it and she just laughs and says she likes him and he treats her good. But she does kind of like to see what she can get away with. Last week my BFF told me that her parents were going out of town for Thanksgiving, so she wanted to have some people over. I asked who she was inviting and she didn't mention her BF. I asked her about it and she said wasn't going to invite him because her ex was in town from college and she wanted him to come over instead and didn't want both of them there. I told her that was shady, but she just laughed it off and said her BF will never find out anyway and he believes whatever she tells him. She said she told him she was heading out of town with her parents, so he has no reason to think she's lying. So the night of the gathering, her ex is there and they are clearly flirting and people are getting a little drunk. BFF is sitting on ex's lap, lots of joking with each other. Just unacceptable behavior from BFF in my opinion. So, I text her BF and tell him that there's something he needs to see. Then I start sending him snaps of BFF and ex. He asks if that's happening right now and I tell him it is. He sends me a text maybe a half hour later asking if I've been drinking. I tell him I have not, but pretty much everyone is drinking or getting high. He just responded with an okay, good. About 20 minutes later there is a loud knock at the door and it's the police. They start giving people breathalyzers and handing out underage tickets, search people for weed and drugs, and one kid had coke on him and got arrested. They let me leave after I passed a breathalyzer test and I immediately called my friend's BF. I asked him what the hell he was thinking and he said he didn't know what I was talking about and tried to play dumb. I told him to cut it out because people actually got in trouble, but he said he thought his GF was with her parents this weekend. I told him a lot of people are going to be pissed at him if they find out what he did, but he just said, well, it looks like we both have secrets to keep now, and hung up. My BFF's parents were pissed and grounded her indefinitely and the news spread all over. I had no idea BF would do what he did and I know my BFF was wrong in the beginning. But I feel terrible that people got in trouble because I started all of this and none of it would have happened if I kept my mouth shut. If I tell my BFF the truth she is going to hate me forever, and that will also put her BF in a position where people will hate him too. I don't know what to do.